When it comes to your retirement, do you want to have the same old plan everyone else has? Of course not. You're unique and have your own goals and dreams. Don't be treated just like a number. This is your retirement. So it's time to think differently. And you're in luck because you found the Retire Your Way podcast with Dave Lopez, founder and managing member of ILG Financial. At ILG Financial, you won't find generic run-of-the-mill plans containing the same old cookie-cutter solutions. Dave and the ILG Financial team focus on building one retirement at a time using their Think Differently philosophy. And that means your own comprehensive plan with customized solutions built to achieve just one goal, yours. So put on your Think Differently hats and get ready to take back control of your retirement today. And for all the tomorrows to come, ILG's Financial Retire Your Way podcast was created just for you, and it's starting right now.
You're listening to the Retire Your Way podcast with Dave Lopez, the founder of ILG Financial, and we're glad you're here today. If you'd like to find out more about Dave Lopez and his business, of course, the website address is ilgfinancial.com, and the all-important phone number is 540-720-5656. That's 540-720-5656. Dave Lopez, it's really good to be with you today.
Ron, good to catch up with you, too. We were joking before we started recording that we every time we get together, we can do a quick catch-up on each other's lives, and I sure enjoy that. And I hear you had a rainy month there where you're from.
Yeah, pretty much, and I think it's pretty much the same just about everywhere. The weather, if you don't like the weather, just stick around. It'll change. It'll be different the next day.
It's funny how you see that. What I see is you better get that lawnmower working if you had a month of rain.
Yeah, I have that problem, too. Today, we're going to talk about 7 mistakes people make when choosing a financial advisor. And, of course, I would suggest that you choose ILG Financial, and specifically Dave Lopez. And, Dave, deciding to work with a financial advisor is a big step in itself towards your future success. But the question of how to pick the right advisor is not only important, but can be very stressful. A 2020 Northwestern Mutual study found that 71% of U.S. adults admit that their financial planning needs improvement. However, only 29% of Americans choose to make that step to actually work with a financial advisor. Dave, why is it so important not only to have a financial advisor, but to find one who works in your best interest? And how can you go about finding the right advisor?
Boy, great questions, Ron. And we hear this kind of all the time. And one of the questions we hear, here's the couple that we hear. 1, do I really need an advisor? Number 2, how do I make sure I'm choosing the right fit for me? Well, the truth is that everyone has different goals, so everyone is going to be looking for different solutions. And that's what makes retirement planning unique as opposed to what we call the accumulation phase when you're just saving for retirement. So everyone has different goals and requires different solutions. However, studies show, interestingly, that those who decide to work with a financial advisor, Ron, not only do they feel more at ease about their finances and their plan moving forward with less stress, but they could end up earning as much as 15% more money in retirement over time because they have that other set of eyes looking at their plan and just another person looking at it. So let's take a closer look at some of the things to avoid when you're looking for an advisor and how the process of picking an advisor works. And we call this the 7 common mistakes. So there's 7 common mistakes that people make when they're looking to hire an advisor. And we're going to jump right off here, Ron. Let's take a look at number 1. Number 1, I would say, is hiring an advisor who is not a fiduciary. A fiduciary, for those of you who don't know, is an individual who is ethically bound to act in another person's best interest. An example would be a physician, your CPA would be a fiduciary, or an attorney. So this obligation, this fiduciary obligation, could go a long way to minimizing any possible conflicts of interest. And at least it holds that advisor to a higher standard than advisors who aren't a fiduciary. I'll throw in there, you ideally, in my opinion, want to look for what we call an independent fiduciary. And that means not only are they a fiduciary, but they don't work for some big firm or one big company that is sending out a Monday morning email to all their advisors as to what investment they're pushing that month that's in the best interest of the firm.
ILG Financial is a fiduciary firm. Let me remind everybody who's listening of that, and that's a very important factor in our conversation today.
It is, and as we mentioned before, we are an independent firm, and that's subtle, but what it means is we don't work for any one large company that's pushing any one investment. So we joke with our clients that when it comes to picking investment vehicles, we really don't have a dog in the hunt. All the investment vehicles that are available to a client as a regular consumer out there are available through our firm, so that you're not limiting yourself as far as tools in the woodshed that you can use to build your plan. You're not limiting yourself because the advisor you're with only has a certain set of tools. So a fiduciary would be number one.
Okay. Now, your Retire Your Way podcast is what you're listening to today with Dave Lopez. Dave, what are some ways to tell right away if an advisor is not a fiduciary?
Well, an advisor who's not a fiduciary, one key flag is going to be they're constantly going to be pushing a certain investment product on you, and they may appear, you might just get that feeling inside that you're talking more to a salesman than to a consultant. They're going to try to get you to believe that you need their product to the exclusion of all others, whether that's in your best interest or not. And of course, that's how most salespeople are trained, right? Overcoming objections and showing you why theirs is the best tool. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, of course, but ideally you want someone who's in more of a consultative fiduciary role here, who's listening to you, finding out what you need, and then they have that to offer, so they're not pushing one product over the other. You want an advisor who understands exactly what your situation is, your risk tolerance, and what you're trying to achieve with your goals, and then they can move to pick the best tools that are effective to that end.
And naturally, if you're talking to a salesman, that salesman is going to be thinking about himself or herself rather than what your goals and needs are. All of that makes perfect sense, Dave. What's another mistake that is commonly made when you're looking for an advisor?
Well, one would be picking just the first advisor that you meet, right out of the phone book, or somebody just pops one up, or you hear about them, and so you just sign on thinking that they're all the same. This one's very straightforward, a lot like when we talked about choosing the fiduciary. A financial advisor and choosing a financial advisor is not a decision that should be made quickly or lightly, right? It seems that it might be easier to choose the first person that you meet or the first person that you find. But like we just discussed, not everyone is going to be working in your best interest, right? Mm-hmm. Just like we mentioned earlier, a non-fiduciary advisor may be working more as a salesman to sell the specific product that they want to sell. Also, you even may have a fiduciary advisor, but they only sell a limited number of investment products. So even at an unconscious level, they may be trying to steer you towards only the products that they offer. That's why you want one that has access to all the products. And we'll kind of talk about that a little more. So choosing an advisor, I would usually recommend that you interview at least a few, 2 or 3 at least, before picking the one that you feel is the best match for you. And that brings us to number 3, doesn't it?
Okay. Yeah. We're talking about 7 ways that you can make sure that you are working with a fiduciary, 7 ways to make sure you do this thing right. And when you're choosing that person, it's so important out there. All of that makes sense. I think that's something when you choose an advisor with the wrong specialty is something that can happen as well. And you have all kinds of specialties, right, Dave?
Absolutely. And that's why, remember, we just talked about number 2 was you want to talk to 2 or 3. An advisor could be a good advisor, but just not the right one for you. So each advisor usually is going to focus or specialize in one aspect of financial planning or investment strategy. And as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, you want to be very aware that in your investment life and your financial life is split up into 2 parts, what we call the accumulation phase of your life. Think of that from the day you start working till around 5 years before you retire. So 19 to 55, something like that. Well, in the accumulation phase, the rules for everybody are roughly the same, aren't they, Ron? Put in as much money as you can put in. Mm-hmm. Don't touch your money, and try to get the best average rate of return over a long period of time as possible to build your bucket as big as possible for retirement. Well, once you get into retirement or get near retirement, about 5 years out, Whether you know it or not, you are now moving into what we call the distribution phase of your life. And in the distribution phase, all the investment rules and strategies change because now money's coming out of those accounts, whether it be for medical bills or just monthly living expenses or gifts for the kids or fun and travel. So when you're distributing the money, all your investment strategies should be different than they were in the accumulation phase. But often folks just stay with the same advisor and with the same strategy. The best example I can give you, Ron, many folks listening today might have a primary care doctor that they've known for years and they love. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, and you trust them.
Practitioner, yeah.
You bet. You trust them. You get good advice. But if, Ron, tomorrow a doctor told you that you had to have heart surgery, just because you know and trust that guy, you are not going to have him do heart surgery. You now need a specialist because the situation's changed. Yeah. So when you move from the accumulation phase to the distribution phase, it's a lot like moving from having a general practitioner that's helped you for the last 20 or 30 years to now you need a specific expertise as you move in and near retirement.
And if you have a headache, you're not going to go to a podiatrist.
You got it, right? So you want not just a specialist, but one that specializes in what you need. So you want to be sure to understand when you're interviewing these advisors, they should be able to very quickly articulate what their strengths and what their weaknesses are. And you should understand those before making a decision. ILG Financial, not only are we an independent fiduciary firm, but we are very clear up front. We are designed and we specialize specifically in building out retirement plans for those 55 and above. That's our specialty and our expertise, just like the heart surgeon is not going to tell you that he's going to work on your feet, as you so eloquently put it, Ron.
By the way, if you'd like to get in touch with ILG Financial, the number, once again, is 540-720-5656. That is 540-720-5656. You can call that number right now, as a matter of fact, and arrange a no-cost and no-obligation conversation. Dave, I think that's something that a lot of us have never thought about is choosing the advisor with the right specialty. And I know a lot of us assume that a financial advisor is all-encompassing. They can do everything.
Ron, you're absolutely right. We get people all the time who come in the office that admit they had no idea that the different specialties that were linked to different strategies when it came to financial investing. So again, and I can't emphasize this enough, you want to find someone who understands where you are in your life, understands what your specific goals are, and you are comfortable that lines up directly with their specific financial specialty. Mm-hmm. This is your first crack and only crack at retirement. You want to be clear at this. We get one shot at this. We do not get any do-overs. There's not going to be time to make up for mistakes if we pick somebody who's a good salesman and wants the business and isn't willing to admit that this isn't their cup of tea. So that brings us to number 4 in our list of 7. You don't want to pick an advisor with an incompatible strategy. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, this is in line with choosing a fiduciary and an independent fiduciary, and it's also in line with picking someone with the appropriate specialty. You want someone, for example, if you find an advisor who is very passionate and very aggressive about their investments, right? They like Bitcoin or they want to, really go for the high tech stuff because it has very big upside potential, but there's also big risk. That falls into the higher risk category. Nothing wrong with that at all, right? But if you're someone who is more conservative and you're more of the belief that, hey, I've done a good job here, I've got enough, I still want to make money, but I'm more concerned with going backwards, you should probably not be working together. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, things really change as you get older and closer to retirement.
You bet. So if you're somebody, here's another example. Let's say you're someone who prefers to go all in or stocks. On stocks, you just love the rush of it and you're okay taking the risk, but you're working with an advisor who's, for whatever reason, pushes heavily into very, very safe stuff. Well, you guys probably aren't seeing eye to eye. It doesn't mean they're wrong, right? It just means you're not a good fit. You want to get someone whose philosophies line up directly with how much risk you're willing to take moving forward and what your goals are. So there are right and wrong fits for your personal situation, right? So don't be intimidated or bullied into a strategy that's not your cup of tea.
Well, this person may be very smart But that does not necessarily mean that they're looking at things through the same lens as you need to look at things, because, as we said, over time, things change.
You're right, Ron. It's a lot like that first date you went on. You always know that the first one's not necessarily going to be the right one. You don't have to know everything about the person, but you can very quickly get an idea if your goals and your philosophies are in a line. And if they're not, you probably don't want to go on that second date. So you're looking for that first date of someone where you see a meeting of the minds as far as what we're trying to accomplish and what their specialties are, and that risk-wise, they're on the same page with you.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of mistakes you can make when you're choosing a financial advisor, and I believe that is, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. So that leads us to number 5. What is the 5th mistake you can make when choosing a financial advisor?
Number 5 would be not asking for credentials and experience, Ron. So again, remember we've talked about someone being an expert. Just because they're listed as an expert doesn't mean that you shouldn't do your due diligence before trusting them as your partner in your financial planning experience. So to give investment advice, a financial advisor is required to pass a test or multiple tests depending on their certifications and their licenses. So someone, for example, who's just selling insurance products will at a minimum have an insurance license, life insurance and long-term care type of license, and annuities, things like that on the insurance side. Someone who's in the investment space, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, exchange traded funds, they're going to have usually one of these licenses, a Series 7, a Series 66 license, or a Series 65, one of those. But in addition to that, they may have other certifications that denote additional training. For example, a certified financial planner is a CFP. We have at our firm, one of the things that we're real proud of is we have a team environment to building out plans. And on our team, of which Alpha Star Capital Management is a key player, not only do we have me working with you with over 12 years experience, a Series 65, a licensed insurance advisor, and we've built hundreds of plans, but incorporated in our team is we have a certified financial planner. We have a chartered financial analyst. It's called a CFA. We have a certificate. One of our folks on the team has a certificate, and get this, quantitative finance. And that's like, think of them as a rocket scientist. That's called a CFQ. Mm-hmm. So ideally you want an advisor who, not necessarily just him, but his immediate close team that's working together to build your plan out has enough range of different specialties so you can take advantage of all those levels of certification. And we do at ILG Financial.
You're listening to the Retire Your Way podcast with Dave Lopez of ILG Financial. And Dave, we are up to number 6 now. And I know a big question that makes choosing an advisor a little confusing is not understanding what's in it for them.
Yeah, that's a great one. And don't be afraid to ask an advisor how they get paid. And if they hesitate on that or balk, that should kind of be a little bit of a red flag to you. The other thing I want to tell you is there's basically 3 different ways an advisor get paid. And this one is interesting that you will see all kinds of opinions on this. And what I have found, unfortunately, is usually you'll hear someone laud the fee payment model that they use and then kind of disparage the others. I would say the fee payment situation is no different than investments. Inherently, they're not good or bad. They're just different. So you want to find the one that's the right fit. And I'll tell you the different 3, and I'll tell you the one I would kind of recommend and how we get paid. So some advisors, Ron, are what are called fee only. So they charge a fee, kind of like your attorney charges an hourly rate, and then they'll do whatever kind of you want as far as planning, and then you're just paying them hourly. Now, after they do that initial meeting and they pay that money, they're in effect done unless you want them to come back and you want to pay them again to look at it again. That can be very expensive. But the advantage to that is they're not selling you anything. They're not invested in any of the investments. So you know that they literally have no dog in the hunt if they're making necessary recommendations. But usually that's a one-time thing. Building a financial plan with fee-only advisors, it's not unusual that they want to charge $2,500 to $5,000 or more to build out your plan because it's kind of a one and done. Mm-hmm. You're not going to end up with someone who's really connected to you for your entire retirement with that model. That's the first one. The second model is what they call as with asset under management. They charge a fee-based model. So the advantage to a fee-based model is if you're, for example, your money's in the markets, is one of the big complaints in the markets is if, hey, my advisor's recommending I sell this and buy that, and you're worried that they're recommending it because they'll get paid again if they sell one thing and buy another, because that's how, in the old model, stockbrokers got compensated. They got a commission out of your pocket every time they bought a new product. So to make more money, they'd have to convince you to switch products. So the regulators really like this a fee-based model. With the fee-based model is they get a percentage, usually 1 or 1.5 is about the normal fee, and it's based on your account values. Now, the advantage to that is when they're making recommendations, their motivation is aligned with yours, Ron. And what I mean by that is for the advisor to make more money, your account has to grow because they're getting a 1.5% or a 1% fee on your account value. And if your account shrinks because they've done poorly, well, they're going to make less money because their value. But more importantly, it means as they're making recommendations for things you should buy or sell or moves you should make, you will know that they have no motivation to do that other than they believe that's going to make your account grow better or be safer if that's what your goal is, because they get paid either way. A lot of what we do with our clients is this fee-based model where we're actively managing a portion of their portfolio and charging a fee for it so that they have that comfort of knowing that the recommendations we make, the only motivation is that they're in their best interest based on what they've identified as their goals and their risk tolerance.
Okay, that makes sense. And you were talking about how different advisors get paid, and there are other models in place as well, right?
Yeah, the third model is kind of a commission-based model, and this one's really misunderstood. And what I mean by that is folks, advisors that don't use it, kind of disparage it to try to get you to use them. And the motivation there is that you don't want someone who gets compensated for selling you a product. Well, everybody in every industry gets compensated by you becoming a customer. So that's not inherently a bad thing. In fact, some compensations, like old mutual funds where an advisor would get a commission, there would be things like a front-end load. And those are pretty much gone away for reasons you might guess. They didn't like those. That meant if you put $100,000 into a mutual fund, your account immediately drops to $95,000 because you have a $5,000 load taken out. Part of that, much of it would have gone to the advisor. So if he wanted to make more money, he would get you out of that one and switch you to a new one with another load. But other commission models could actually be very beneficial to you. What they mean is the advisor gets compensated, but not out of your pocket. They get compensated by the company based on the amount of money the company hopes to earn by reinvesting your money over time. And if they're not effective, it doesn't affect you. So you don't actually pay a penny in fees on a product that's a commission-based product like that. And a great example of that, Ron, would be if you go to the bank and you get a CD that right now is paying, 2.5%, you don't pay any fees, right? The cost is you've agreed to leave the money in there for 3 or 4 or 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Right, but you're not paying a fee. If you put $100,000 in, $100,000 goes in. But the banker is still getting paid somehow. Obviously, that's how he goes to work. And the way he's getting paid is that the bank is taking your money over that 3 years, loaning it out, and they're hoping to make more money than they're going to pay you in interest. Now, if they're unsuccessful, they take the loss, not you. You still didn't pay a fee. But their hope is they make a little more and they're able to pay their banker a commission for doing all the work to doing the sale. So there are products on the insurance side that are commission-based, and there's nothing wrong with those as long as you understand that the advisor, and this is the case with ILG, we have a hybrid where some of the products we might get commission and you're paying no fee, which is a great thing for you. And some of the stuff that actually needs active day-to-day monitoring and management is the fee-only model. So the result would be some kind of hybrid. But the ideal is to know that your advisor, and in our case, it's the same way. We never get paid twice. It's one or the other. And that's what we mean, Ron, when we tell folks we really don't have a dog in the hunt, whether we put somebody in a product where we got commission or whether we put somebody in something that's fee-based. Either way, we get paid. And it's roughly the same thing when you do the math, and they don't want to admit this, but it's roughly the same thing over long periods of time.
Yeah, when I'm thinking about all this, I'm thinking that people can really be in danger of making the wrong decision when they're choosing an advisor, and they need to understand all these things.
They sure do. It's a lot to talk about, and you need to be very comfortable asking those questions. So don't be afraid to answer those things. But the perfect example that no one kind of talks about when they're talking about that hybrid model is that we try to position folks that they're only paying a fee on stuff that they and I agree needs to be actively monitored day to day or month to month to make sure what we want to happen happens. Some things, think like a CD or stuff that's more stable, doesn't really need management, and that stuff we don't want to pay a fee. So one of the challenges to that fee-based model is a lot of companies that are fee-based, their goal is to get every penny you have and have all of it under management. Mm-hmm. Even if a portion of it is sitting in very stable stuff that's not really being managed, they're still collecting the fee. Whereas with our model, the stuff that doesn't need that active management, there's many of those things have no fee at all. So if you've got some of your bucket earning, 1.5% fee and half of your money earning no fee at all in, you're paying a lower fee than maybe you would be at a fee-based advisor, and certainly maybe less than if you just paid someone $5,000 or $6,000 up front for a one-time plan building process. So they're all different strategies. We favor the hybrid strategy where we have multiple avenues and we can try to minimize your fees based on what you're trying to accomplish.
Well, Dave, I certainly appreciate your giving us so much to think about. These are some great rules of thumb to look out for when starting the process of finding a financial advisor. But the thought just occurred to me. We started out talking about how there were going to be 7 different mistakes you could make when choosing a financial advisor. And by my recollection, we've only covered 6. What about the 7th one?
You caught that, didn't you, Ron? So for number 7, call the office. Call the office. We're going to go over number 7 with you. It's not any less important, but this is our way of enticing you to take that first step that we talked about interviewing advisors. Take action. Get on the phone. Meet us. Find out if we're a good fit for you, and we'll let you know what number 7 is.
All right. Well, that sounds really good, and I know that there are folks out there who would like to get in touch with you and have a conversation with you. Again, there is no obligation and no cost for this conversation. The number to call is 540-720-5656. 540-720-5656. Dave Lopez, founder of ILG Financial, would love to have a conversation with you. You can go to the website again. It's ilgfinancial.com anytime you'd like to find out more. But the best thing to do is just call that phone number, 540-720-5656. Dave, thanks for being with us today.
Sure enjoyed it. Good being with you, Ron. Have a great week, everyone.
Information provided is for educational purposes only and is not intended as investment advice for any individual or entity. All information contained herein is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. The views presented today are those of Dave Lopez and not necessarily represent the views of Alpha Star Capital Management, LLC. The opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not constitute financial, legal, or tax advice. Please consult your financial professional before executing any financial strategy. Investment advisory services offered through Alpha Star Capital Management, LLC, registered investment advisor. Alpha Star and ILG Financial, LLC are independent entities.